Hello everyone, and welcome to a virtual field trip around the GroundZero360 exhibit that is currently sitting at Houston Christian University's Academic Center. GroundZero360 is dedicated to the firefighters and police officers who risked everything to save lives on September 11, 2001. To the victims and their families who grieve, to the hundreds of rescue workers who traveled from afar, to the vigil keepers whose candles lit up the night sky with hope, to the leaders who united a city in its darkest hour, to the New Yorkers who endured the sheer evil in man's darker side. You are the heroes who rose above it all. You will never be forgotten. A quote from Nicola McClean, an artist who created this wonderful exhibit. Through harrowing visuals, heartbreaking missing posters, and a unique panoramic installation, GroundZero360 invites you to step into the past and feel what 8 million New Yorkers were feeling in the days that followed the terror attacks of September 11th. Visitors are also able to hear the city's previously unreleased emergency radio calls, touch a fragment of twisted steel and a broken piece of granite from the World Trade Center. This exhibition includes personal artifacts lent by families of police officers and firefighters who lost their lives at the World Trade Center, crosses cut from the steel by ironworkers, a flag that flew over Ground Zero, and a survivor tree cast in bronze with steel from the World Trade Center and Freedom Tower. This is a World Trade Center steel fragment. This steel once helped hold up the South Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. On September 11, 2001, the left side of this piece of steel was sheared off as the skyscraper collapsed. The right side was later cut by ironworkers who worked at Ground Zero. This fragment is a small part of the 200,000 tons of steel that collapsed with the Twin Towers. After every human tragedy, we hear echoes of never forget. GroundZero360 is a 501c3 organization that is committed to keeping the human toll of the 9/11 attacks in the forefront of our consciousness. 9/11 family members and first responders travel with the exhibition to educate the public who cannot visit the September 11th Museum in New York City. The photographs, paintings, sculptures, and artifacts of victims who perished in the attacks are important and compel visitors to think about the effects of September 11th and the worldwide reach of terrorism. The attack on the World Trade Center on 9/11 resulted in the largest loss of life by a foreign attack on American soil. 2,606 people were killed at the World Trade Center. 184 were killed at the Pentagon. The victims ranged in age from 2 to 85 years. Only 18 people were rescued alive from the rubble of the World Trade Center. Of those who perished during the initial attacks and the subsequent collapses of the towers included 343 New York City firefighters, 71 law enforcement officers including 23 from the New York City Police Department, and 37 officers at the Port Authority. On these two towers hold the names of the 2,996 people who lost their lives that day, including the 184 people at the Pentagon and 40 who passed in the plane crash in Pennsylvania. The next part of the exhibit is called The Wall of the Missing. In the days after the collapse of the World Trade Center towers, family members hung missing posters all over New York City in their desperate search for their lost loved ones. These particular missing posters are courtesy of the National September 11 Memorial and Museum on behalf of the Sisters of Charity, St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan, New York. Lenore Collins made this collage in 2021. She says, quote, "When I put this collage together, I made sure that I used every poster that was given to me. I read every single one of them. I was so moved by the outpouring of love from heartsick family members that I was totally haunted by it for days. My response to this profound feeling of the loss of life after looking at these posters was what I wanted to illustrate in this piece." This helmet used to belong to Fire Lieutenant Paul T. Mitchell. While driving home after night duty, Lieutenant Paul Mitchell heard that an emergency was unfolding at the World Trade Center. He chose to turn around and borrow gear from his former firehouse in Brooklyn and rushed with colleagues to Ground Zero. Lieutenant Mitchell died in the South Tower's collapse. His remains were not found. Along with Fire Lieutenant Paul T. Mitchell, there were 343 members of the New York Fire Department who passed on September 11th. This next part of the exhibition contains over 100 pieces of artwork, sculptures, and paintings. These incredible pieces allow artists to showcase their feelings and emotions of distraught, sadness, and anger as they try to come to terms with what happened on September 11th, 2001. This next piece of artwork is called Irreversible by Tolle Lawrence of Wicklow, Ireland. He completed this oil on canvas in 2021. On thinking about that fateful day in September 2001, I had the iconic towers constantly in my mind's eye. It then started wandering to a memory of seeing the winged goddess of victory, which stands captivating and elegant on the landing of the Great Staircase of the Louvre in Paris. Slowly, the two started to merge, the twin towers becoming twin goddesses, representing all the triumphs of the country that is the United States of America. The irreversible destruction and attacks on the US on that day, and the horror of seeing the twin towers collapse can never truly be felt, I believe, by anyone who is not American, nor the nightmare be understood by anyone who is not there to witness or feel the endless carnage. On viewing my finished work, I found it lacked the element of truth I was striving to achieve. It was then that I realized I had to damage the canvas to allow the viewer to see beyond what I had painted. I took a white-hot iron from the fire and burned 2 holes through the hearts of the twin tower goddesses to see the true shock of the burn holes and to feel the undeniable and irreversible destruction that had been done. A quote from O'Toole Lawrence. Next, we will be going down this hall that has pieces of artwork donated by Sharpstown High School and Bel Air High School. This drawing was completed by Yara Diaz. The towers are in the candle's flame like a human soul. The spirit goes towards the light within the smoke, going up high. The touched hearts stand tough, holding hands like holding a candle. With this, I show the feeling of an inner turmoil and the wistfulness in many souls that had reached the light's flame. This poster holds two quotes from the co-creators of this exhibition. The first quote says, "Most of the city fled in fear of their lives, but New York's finest and bravest were not among them. On 9/11, I was commanding officer of the NYPD's 41st precinct. Police officers faced danger often, but nothing prepared us for the chaos and death of that day. There were few. We in the NYPD still remember the thousands of innocent souls we couldn't save. We will never forget the sacrifice of the rescue workers who died. Yet, one of the most uplifting moments of my career was seeing crowds lining the streets, cheering for police officers, firefighters, iron workers, and healthcare workers reporting to work at Ground Zero. I felt we were all united in love of our country." Paul McCormack, New York Police Commander. The next quote reads, "In the immediate aftermath of attacks, Ground Zero felt like a world removed from any other, one that had been devastated beyond words. The screaming sirens and alarms were strangely silenced within the tight boundaries of the police frozen zone. An unearthly sense of obscurity and loss filled the air. In a matter most unfitting of New York City, one could hear a pin drop. Dust was falling above and around my head, and every grain of it appeared to be wailing, as it slowly descended, signaling the end of the world in New York, as once we had known it. Members of the police and fire departments appeared, reappeared, and disappeared out of the dusty silence, the glare of the travesty forever etched on their faces. I witnessed the best of people facing the worst of times. Their patriotism, confidence, and courage was infectious. I felt a profound sense of being American, which has stayed with me to this day. Like many other poignant world events that mark our history, it is our responsibility to remember. It is our responsibility to never forget." Nicola, McClean, photographer. Lastly, we'll come across helmets from 3 former New York firefighters. The first helmet we see belonged to Alan David Feinberg, FDNY Engine 54. Alan Feinberg was a veteran member of the FDNY, having spent nearly 20 years in the FDNY before he lost his life on September 11, 2001. He began his career at Engine 40/Ladder 35 and later moved to the firehouse known as the Pride of Midtown to work as the aide to the chief for the 9th Battalion. Alan was 48 years young when he died, but will always be remembered as a boy who never grew up by his wife Wendy and 2 children, Tara and Michael. "To know him was to love him, our hero," a quote from Wendy Feinberg. Next, we have the helmet of Stephen E. Bilson, FDNY Ladder 24. A graduate of Lehman College, he became a career lifeguard in Rockaway, where he lived for 30 years. Belson joined the FDNY in 1973 and immediately felt he found his niche. A close friend of Father Michael Judge, Belson was named an honorary Irishman by the Consulate General of Ireland. His love and dedication to his firehouse gave him the label Mr. Ladder 24. He was devoted to the firehouse where he spent over 2 decades. Lastly, we see the helmet that belonged to David Martin Wise, FDNY Rescue 1. David Wise always wanted to be a firefighter. As a young man, he was an iron worker in New York City and a volunteer firefighter in Freeport, New York. He joined the FDNY in 1989, and in October 1997, while off duty, he made a daring rescue of a man in a sinking car in the East River. He was selected to join FDNY's Elite Rescue 1 unit in Manhattan, which was his dream come true. Known for his relentless sense of humor, his impressive muscular build, and his passion for what he did, David Wise was a larger-than-life personality that made his mark wherever he went. He had true zest for life, and it reflected in everything he did and everyone he did it with. Last seen on the 31st floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, continuing up, his remains were never recovered. He was a loving father, son, brother, and friend. Brandon McCormack, Star of David, 2014. After the attack of 9/11 in New York City, iron workers were being rescued to help and volunteer down at Ground Zero. I assisted with the bucket barrage, search, and rescue team, and worked with the FDNY cutting and removing steel debris where they thought there might be human remains present. I'm proud to have helped out at Ground Zero, but I'm also sad at the same time. A few years after, my brother Paul asked me if I wanted to create some items from the steel that came directly from the Twin Towers. I designed and created the Star of David, the Catholic Cross, and the Celtic Cross to honor the victims of the attack. It was a privilege to work on the project and honor the victims of 9/11. Gary Robinson, I thought I heard the wind call my name, 2022. I have thought about the people in the buildings, on the stairways, in offices, at the windows, or in corridors, wondering what they were thinking. I hope through this fear, a calm or peacefulness would have come to them. Did they think about the last thing they said to their wife, husband, son, or daughter? My painting is called I Thought I Heard the Wind Call My Name, referring to our time to leave this earth, but also acknowledging grief and the comfort of knowing that those still here are being watched over by their lost loved ones. I would see this work as a healing painting, and when they heard the wind call their name, they found some kind of solace, warmth, or comfort. I hope they could feel the love of their families embracing them, saying, "It's okay, we love you, and know you love us." I Can't Believe the News Today, September 12, 2001, made by Paul McCormack of Dublin, Ireland in 2021, acrylic on canvas. This painting is my response to my memory of 9/11. I was on holidays, staying in my brother's apartment in southern France. We had no TV, and I was oblivious to the events in New York the previous day. On the morning of the 12th, I went to my usual cafe and telephoned home from a coin box. My sister answered and asked had I heard that 2 aeroplanes had crashed into the Twin Towers in New York. I thought it was a joke and waited for the punchline. But no, it was the terrorist attack. Still in disbelief after the call, I crossed the street to a news agent to see the entire newsstand with images of every single stage of the attack on the covers of every newspaper and magazine. At the time, my youngest sister was touring the US and had sent a postcard from New York to my brother. We felt relieved that she had moved on to the West Coast. Thank you everyone for joining me on this virtual field trip around the GroundZero360 exhibit that is at Houston Christian University's Academic Center. Goodbye.